Market season is here and it's my favorite and most dreaded time of year. I love it because you get to set up all your stuff and make it pretty and actually talk to people who are interested in your art all day and even make other artist friends. But it's also the most stressful time of year as an independent artist because you basically have to shove everything you've ever made in your entire life into a tiny car, drive at least an hour away, speed run, set everything up, and then sit there all day not knowing if you're going to sell a single thing and even make back what you paid for the booth. I've had pretty good market days where I've sold almost everything I brought, and also really bad depressing market days where I sold like 2 things and didn't even make back what I paid to be there. And don't get me wrong, there's a million things that you can't control that could make or break a market day, like the weather being bad or the organizers of the market forgetting to tell anyone about it. But something that you can control that's consistently brought a positive aspect to every market that I've done, even if I haven't sold a lot, people have said nice things about them. Cats. People love little plushy cats. They're super simple and easy to make, low sew, and it's honestly, if you can't tell, a little addicting once you get started making them. Every time I set out to make 1 or 2, kind of like for this video I wanted to make a few to show you guys my different cats, I end up making 20 because it's just like addictive. You keep thinking about different ideas or different themes or color combos that you could do, and it's just so easy to keep making them. So it's not a chore, and it makes mass production for markets really fun because every single one of them comes out unique and special and different in its own way. I'll take a second to show you guys all of the different versions of the cat patterns I've made. First we have the original cat pattern, which included solid color loaf cat and spotted color loaf cat. This is the one everyone kind of likes, and I like it a lot too because of the spot on the cat's butt and how the tail is kind of 2 different colors. Next I made fruit cats, which had strawberry, watermelon, and like citrus themed cats. When I used to mainly sell plushies, the strawberry cats were always like my most popular. And I also made a YouTube video showing how to just do the modifications if you already had the original cat pattern. This flower cats and friends pattern is my all-time favorite cat pattern that I've made because I just think they're so cute and perfect for spring. I loved making bumblebee cats, butterfly cats, flower themed, and I also extended like the color patterns to make striped cats, tuxedo themed cats, ragdoll and Siamese cats, and then last but not least I made sushi cats, which includes all 3 sizes of cats plus little like sushi themed friends. I feel so silly, I almost forgot kittens and minis, a pattern I made with 8 different mini kittens and smaller like medium size. This sky has always been one of my favorites. I call him Cloudy Sky or Stormy Sky Cat, and I just think it's cool because it's like the opposite of what you would normally do, like this in a light color, that in a dark color, but I like it. It's like a stormy sky with clouds in it. Sorry I took so long to make a tutorial for this pattern. Honestly, there are a million cat loaf style patterns out there, especially on YouTube, and I wasn't really sure if anyone would be interested, but I asked and you guys said you were, so here we are. I think it's important to acknowledge that my cat pattern is not groundbreaking, it's not like reinventing the wheel. Obviously I'm inspired by crochet artists and designers of the past. This is just my take on a very simple amigurumi style of plushie. I still have Vanna White's book that I remember begging my dad for in the middle of Michael's when I was like 13 because it was the first time I had ever seen crochet plushies. My mom had taught me how to do like basic crochet stitches before that, but only in the context of like 1970s doilies and granny squares and pretty shawls and stuff like that. More traditional styles of crochet. So this book was the first time I had ever even seen a little cute crochet animal. And not to call myself out, it did hurt a little when I realized this. That was almost 20 years ago. The base design for it is something that's extremely simple and been around for, to my knowledge, at least 20 years. I would guess much longer than that. It is pretty cool though because my original cat pattern became popular last year because of like social media and videos and stuff. I have gotten messages from people saying like this like reminded them they liked creating and they liked crocheting. That made me so happy because I truly believe there is nothing in life more important, maybe other than like your children and your family, than having a creative outlet and doing something you're passionate about and that you enjoy. Having a creative outlet is so valuable to your mental health and even like the state of your life in general. So take this Loaf cat and the pattern I'm going to show you as an example. You can use that as like the bones to create anything that you'd like. For example, how I showed all the different cat patterns I've made off of like a tube with ears and a tail. Don't be afraid to try something new. I've been thinking lately I really want to try to make a cactus cat because that would be really cool. I'm sorry. That's enough of me yapping. This is the cat I'm going to show you how to make today. The reason I wanted to show you this like tricolor pattern is because it's one of my favorite. It's super versatile and it's really easy. All you need is 3 colors. So you need white for the little face and feet and tip of the tail. You need an accent color for the ears, and then you need a variegated type of color for the body. And these are just suggestions. You can do anything that you want. When we head over to the yarn wall over here, I'll show you like some of the styles of variegated colored yarn Bernat sells. It gives you so many opportunities to come up with different themes. Here's a bubblegum cat I made just with white, a solid color, and then a variegated color for the body. So yeah, let's head over and I'll show you some yarn ideas and what I'm going to use today, and then we can get started. I prefer to use Bernat blanket yarn, but you can use any type of yarn you like. If you end up using a thinner yarn, your cat will come out smaller, and if you want to make a giant cat, you could use thicker yarn. Some cool colors you could use are this green. Misty Mauve is my absolute favorite, but it was discontinued. This overcast color is kind of similar. I've only used it a few times, so I thought it'd be fun to try today. And as an accent color, I paired it with this sparkly light purple, and I thought it went cool together. At first I was considering the obvious like blue ears to go with it, but I didn't have the right shade. I always use vintage white because it's more of a cream color and it's not so jarring as like white. Then we're going to need 7 stitch markers, and I'm going to use a 6.5 millimeter inline crochet hook. But if you're using different yarn, feel free to adjust the size of the hook you're using. I'm going to be using 18mm kawaii style eyes that I painted myself. I didn't clean the sparklies off the front because I'm just using them and they'll come off eventually. If you're using this type of sinker eyes, you're definitely going to need a tool to put the back on. And then I like to use a cotton worsted weight yarn, like this name brand Sugar and Cream, but you could use any worsted weight yarn you'd like. Polyfill, a yarn needle, and then I'm going to use Arlene's Fabric Fusion because I'm going to show you a new way to put on the whiskers. I wanted to thank all of my friends from Patreon and on YouTube for supporting me. If you would like to support me, you could always pick up a PDF copy of one of my patterns, join my Patreon, or like, comment, and subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Everything counts and it all means so much to me. We're going to start this pattern the same way we basically start all of my patterns. We're going to make a magic circle and then place 8 single crochets within the magic circle. Don't stress if you're not comfortable making a magic circle yet. You could always chain about 4 and make a circle and then work within that. If you do end up working in a chain circle, you might be left with a hole, but don't freak out because when we put the X nose on, you can kind of like cover it and close it a little, so it won't be that big of a deal. Sorry I sound kind of sick. I was sick for like the past week and a half, and I thought I finally got over it from the library kid germs, but I woke up early this morning to finish the voiceover for this video, and it feels like I got new kid germs. A few of the reasons why I like using Bernat blanket yarn is that it doesn't shed and it doesn't usually snap when you're pulling the circle closed, but it's always helpful to wiggle it to make sure you're getting it really tight. And then when we go to work row 2, what I was showing is that you're gonna completely skip that starting chain that we used to make the magic circle and then work into the top of the first like real single crochet that has 2 loops on the top. And for row 2, super simple, we're just going to increase around, which basically means we're putting 2 single crochets into every stitch, so that will double our numbers and make a flat circle. If it's the first time you're making this project, or if you're new to crocheting, you should definitely be using a stitch marker. I've made these like a billion times, so I always forget. But something you have to decide and stick with for the rest of the project is if you're going to place your stitch marker in the last stitch of each row, or the first stitch of each row. I prefer to place my stitch marker in the last stitch of each row. Just make sure you're consistent with it so you're not like switching around and then your numbers get messed up. For row 3, we're going to continue making a flat circle. So we're going to place 1 single crochet in the first stitch and then an increase in the next stitch and repeat that 8 times. So 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets together in the same stitch, repeated 8 times. And this is what I was talking about where like this pattern is so simple. It's basically we're going to make a big flat circle and then we're going to just stop increasing and single crochet basically a tube. You can make it as long or as short as you want, and then we're going to close off with a flat circle. When you're doing increasing rows like this, your last stitch should always be an increase. And at the end of this row, we're going to do a color change. So we're not going to pull through to finish our last stitch with white. We're going to take a second to grab our body color and then pull through with our body color to finish the last stitch of row 3. And it's just a really simple, easy way to change colors that you don't have to think about too much. For row 4, continue making the flat circle. You should start to see the pattern now. We're going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase and repeat that 8 times. And it's up to you whether you want to stop and tie your ends together along the way or wait until we stop at the face to tie them. I have never had an issue with my ends coming undone. And I usually tie them 3 times, alternating the end that I'm looping over with to make the knot. If you are nervous about it, you could always add a dot of that Arlene's Fabric Fusion to the knot, and it will definitely never come out then. I'm trying to pay attention and move my stitch marker after each row so that you can see where the new row is going to start. And row 5, we're going to continue our flat circle, only this time we're going to make 3 single crochets and then an increase and repeat that 8 times. And something you should be aware of that you can check to make sure you're on track, your increases should always be lining up. So the new increase that you're making should be right on top of the increase from the last row. And that's just a good way to stay on track and make sure everything is right. And once you get more comfortable with crocheting, that's why I don't always use stitch markers, is because you can kind of tell you're on track by lining up the increases and just counting the amount of times you've repeated the increase set. This is our last increasing row, so basically after we finish this, we're done with the shape of the face and we're gonna move on to making ears in the next row. So I wanted to stop and kind of show you on a finished cap first before we even make them so you have an idea of what we're gonna do. Crochet stitches have a front and a back loop. The front loop is the one facing you towards the front of your work and the back loop is right behind it. They're the 2 loops on the top of the stitch. So when we go around to make this row, we're gonna work in the front loop only to create the ear, and then for the next row when we crochet around again, we're gonna work in the back loops of those same stitches so that the ears are kind of built right in. I'll show you a cool trick using stitch markers to mark the loops so they're easier to see, because with fuzzy yarn it is kind of hard to see sometimes. So single crochet 17, but be careful not to finish the last stitch because we're going to switch over to the accent color for the ears. So instead of pulling through with the body color to finish the last stitch, we can take a second to grab our accent color and then pull through with the color of the ears. And you don't have to switch colors for the ears if you don't want to. I think it looks pretty with the body color too. So here's what I was talking about before. I'm showing you the front loops and the back loops of the next 3 stitches. So we're going to place a stitch marker in the back loop only of the next 3 stitches. We are not going to work in these loops for this row. We're going to work in the front loops right in front of them to create the ear, and then those marked stitches are the ones we're going to work in the next row. Insert your hook into the front loop only of the first stitch and make a normal single crochet. Yarn over, and in the next front loop only, we're going to create a double crochet, chain 1, and then another double crochet in the same front loop. In the last front loop only stitch to finish the ear, we're going to make a front loop only single crochet, but we're not going to pull through with the ear color to finish it. We're going to pull through with the body color to finish it because we want to switch back to do the little single crochets between the ears. So single crochet 4 between the ears, and again, don't finish the last stitch because we'll switch back over to the ear color to make the second ear. Take a second now to mark the back loop only of the next 3 stitches if you'd like to, and then we'll move on to make the second ear. which is exactly the same as the first ear. We're going to make a front loop only single crochet. In the next front loop only stitch, we're going to make a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, all made into the same stitch. And then in the last stitch, we're going to make a front loop only single crochet. Just be careful not to finish the stitch with the ear color because we're going to switch back to the body color to finish off the row. And there you go. I feel like that was the hardest part of the pattern and now it's behind us. So to finish off the row, just single crochet 13 with the body color. And now when we go to crochet row 7, we'll work behind the ears and it'll be pretty easy because we already have the stitches we're gonna work into marked. Single crochet 17 to get you to the first ear. And what I'm pointing out right now is just be careful when you have 17, it should end here. You shouldn't be working a single crochet into the top of the first stitch of the ear, because we're going to flip the ear forward and then place 1 single crochet in each of the back loop only stitches we had marked from the row before. And when we go to flip the ear back and then work in the in-between stitches, we want to be careful that we're working into the top of the first real single crochet that isn't part of the ear. But it's kind of easier when you make the ears different colors because you can really see that divide in the stitches. So just make 4 single crochets between the ear. And then we're going to do the same thing for the second ear. We're going to flip it forward. You can take out your stitch markers and then place 1 single crochet in each of the back loops behind the ear. Flip it back and then working in the front. Again, be careful you're getting that first stitch on the body. And then finish up the row with 13 single crochets. I think it looks great. And it's a really easy way to crochet on the ears so that you don't have to sew them. Row 8 is super simple, just single crochet around. You shouldn't have any issues and you should have 40 stitches. In the next row, we're going to add the feet, but I wanted to show you how to adjust them first in case you have to. Because here's the thing, everyone's tension is different. Everyone uses different yarn, everyone uses a different hook size. So place 2 stitch markers where the feet are supposed to be in the first and 6th stitch. And this will just help you visualize what it will look like and make sure that the feet are going to line up with the ears. It only takes an extra second and it saves you from making the whole cat and realizing at the end it doesn't look right. So once you're sure we're in the right spot, we're gonna make a bobble stitch, but we're gonna change colors, so we're gonna do it a little differently. We're just gonna hold the yarn as you yarn over. It is pretty awkward, but after you get the first stitch done, it's not so bad. And then we're gonna make 5 double crochets into the same stitch, but we're not gonna finish each one. And we're gonna leave the last loop on our hook so that eventually, once we get all the 5 done, we're going to have 6 loops on our hook, including the starting loop. And you can adjust the number of double crochets that you make the bobble stitch with if you want smaller feet, or you could try to add some for bigger feet, but it does get harder to do the more you add. I think a 5 double crochet bobble stitch looks pretty proportionate to the rest of the cat body. And then we're going to pull through with the body color. And be careful not to miss that first stitch in between the feet because sometimes it can be a little hard to see if your bobble stitch is larger. We're going to do 4 single crochets between the feet, and then we're going to do the same thing for the second foot. But it'll be a little easier to do that first stitch because the white is already connected to the other foot. Just yarn over, make a double crochet, don't finish it, and do the same thing 5 times. So yarn over, start to make a double crochet, don't finish it, and do that again. And the reason we're changing colors kind of funny for the feet is because we want the stitch on the top of the foot that we're going to work into in the next row, we want that to be the body color. So there's not a lot of color migration, because if you were to do that stitch in white, then when we went to crochet around it in the next row, that white would kind of move around and wouldn't look great. So it's just a little bit of awkwardness saves us in the long run. The rest of the row is super simple, just single crochet until you reach the stitch marker. And if you had to move your feet over one way or the other, it's really no big deal because we're at the tube portion of the pattern. We're just going to be going around and not adding or subtracting anything. So if you had to move it one stitch over either way, it's really okay, and don't stress about it. Now is a great time to stop and tie any ends you might have, and then I'm going to show you how to add the eyes and the face details. This is just how I like to make my cat plushies. You should feel free to experiment and make them with any eyes that you like, different mouth shapes, different whisker styles. I've seen so many people's cat creations and they all look so unique and special. I'm going to be using 18mm kawaii style eyes that I painted with chameleon flakes and UV resin. And I was trying to decide which color I liked because all three colors went with the plushie, but I ended up picking the purple because I thought it accented the ears well. Hey, so it's editing Annie from the future. I did not record making the face on that cat at all. I don't know if I forgot to hit the button or what happened. So I really quickly made another cat because I need to show you guys how to make the face. Just like pretend it's the same cat, okay? I placed my eyes between rows 3 and 4, slightly above the center of row 1 where the mouth is gonna be. And it kind of lines up perfectly with the color change of the white face. One of the reasons that I like doing a white face and a variegated colored yarn body is because when you use like a busy colored yarn right on the face area, sometimes it's a little hard to see the mouth. And when you use the white, it really like draws your attention to the cat's face. Now that the eyes are on, we can add an X for the nose and mouth. And this is the whole reason why I use 8 single crochets to start my patterns instead of 6, like patterns normally start, is because I want the smile and X to be evenly distributed. So there should be 2 single crochets on the top, 2 single crochets on the side, 2 single crochets on the bottom, and 2 single crochets on the other side. So I insert it from the back and go over and down. And then I take my yarn off the needle, put the other starting end on, and then make the other top of the X. And through trial and error over the last few years since I've been making these cats, that's how I like to do it, and how I get the most like even X and even nose and mouth like that every single time. Because if you make it different ways, the X can be like kind of lopsided or look weird or he looks mad. But that's how I've consistently made the face for years now, and it works basically every time. Alright, we're back to original cat. Now I'm going to show you how to do whiskers in like the new style I've been using, and I'll show you the old style too that I included the instructions on how to do the old ones in the pattern. So the cat on the left of the screen is in the old style of whiskers, and then the cat on the right side of the screen is the new style of whiskers that I wanted to show you today. And I'll show you how to get them so they don't fall out and stuff like that. I still like the old style, I like the new style because it's like 3-dimensional and it adds a little extra to the plushie. So we're gonna take some of the same cotton yarn we used to make the X for the nose and mouth, and we're gonna put 4 knots in it and kind of space them in a way to create 2 of the whiskers. I usually just eyeball it, but if I had to guess, I would say make the whiskers about 2 inches to 2.5. And so there's one I just made, and then I'll make the second one. The third knot can be closer. And then I just kind of measure it to make sure they're the same length by folding over the first one and adjusting the ending knot to be at the same space as the first one. I don't know, now that I'm watching it on film, I think I made it more complicated than it has to be. I don't even know if doing it this way saves any time. Maybe it saves a tiny bit of yarn. But basically just make 2 strings with a knot on each side the same length, about 2 to 2.5 inches. And then cut as close as you can to the knot without undoing it, and that will be your 2 whiskers. To attach them to the cat, I use my crochet hook and just insert it to the side of the eye about 1 or 2 rows over, and then I pull the whisker through. And you can move it up or down or in or out. This is just where I like to add it, and I think it looks really cute. And then repeat the same for the other side. and then I'll show you how to secure them, because right now, if you're making it for yourself, like, that's fine. But if you're gonna sell it, I feel like they should be secure, because someone's probably gonna tug on one, and if it comes out, they might not know how to put it back. Flip the cat's face inside out. Look at the gnarly insides, and you're gonna find the spot where your whisker is. And then this is where I use Arlene's Fabric Fusion to secure it on the inside. And I just squish a little bit right under so that the two are glued together. Warning about this glue. It is super permanent. Make sure everything is where you want it before you use this glue. It's never coming off, ever. Yeah, or if you don't want to use that, you could use hot glue, like a hot glue gun, but the same warning, it's never going to come off ever. So just make sure you know where you want it, and then you can secure it. And at this point, I kind of just set my cat aside and I do other stuff. Like, I'll make a bunch of cats up to this point, like their faces and get their body colors and everything. And then I'll glue their whiskers, and then the next day I'll keep doing it. But I finished this cat the same day. I waited like 5 or 10 minutes and then the glue wasn't wet anymore. And even if you wanted to, you could just keep crocheting. Just like be careful you don't get glue on your hands, basically. We're past all of the hard parts, and the rest of the plushie will be a breeze. We're going to single crochet around for 6 rows. I'm totally confident you can do that on your own. I just wanted to show you really quickly how I crochet with the bobble stitches, because it can be a little weird. And I wanted to point out, like, we're not getting that color migration because of the weird way we change colors for the bobble stitches. So I think that weird color change is kind of worth it. Make sure you're moving your stitch marker after each row and keeping track of where they're going to start, because for row 16, after we finish single crocheting around a bunch, we're going to add the back feet. And these you probably will have to adjust. I rarely ever have to adjust the front feet, but you're probably going to have to adjust the back because it's different for everyone, like I said, and we've been going around for a bunch of rows. So just do the same thing. Use your stitch markers to visualize where they're going to be. Place 1 for the first foot and then count 4 in between, and then another for the second foot. And what I'm showing is just how crochet naturally goes to the right. Like, our first stitch all the way down there was at the first foot, and now our first stitch has moved over like almost 2 to the right, because you're always putting your new stitch to the right of the stitch from the row before. So yeah, just test it out with stitch markers, make sure it looks good, and then we can make the back feet the same way that we made the front feet. Make the amount of single crochets you have to be at your right spot, and then yarn over and hold the white color on the back just to do that first double crochet, and then it should be secured. And then make 4 more double crochets, not finishing each one in the same stitch. Drop the white color and pick up the body color to pull through all 6 loops on your hook. And then be careful you're not missing that first stitch right after the bobble, because sometimes it can be hard to see. Make that one and then 3 more for a total of 4 single crochets between the feet. And then we're going to repeat the process for the second back foot. We're going to yarn over with the white, insert your hook, pull up a loop, pull through both loops, don't finish. Repeat that for a total of 5 double crochets in the bobble stitch. Yarn over with the body color, pull through all 6 loops to finish off the bobble, and then be careful you don't miss that next single crochet. Now we're basically in the home stretch. You can just single crochet to make it back to your stitch marker to finish off the row. And then for the next row, we're going to single crochet around again. And I'll just show you how I single crochet with the bobble stitches. I kind of have a dilemma where, as I said, market season is coming up and I should be like hoarding all of my plushies to fill my booth and like have it look really nice. But at the same time, I kind of just want to upload my cats to my website because people like email me a lot asking, and I don't always have a ton of stuff on there. So I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I might upload them, and then I'll hate myself later when it's like the week before my market. It's Easter. Everyone should be able to get a cat. Something cool about the Bernat blanket variegated colors is that they often pull in different ways. For example, this one made really cool stripes, but that bubblegum cat I showed earlier was kind of a little random. And if you look back at my Stormy Sky cat, that one was more zigzag. So it's really cool how the different colored yarns pull in different ways on the cats. So now we're basically gonna do the opposite of what we did in the beginning. We're gonna do 3 single crochets and then an invisible decrease, which is pulling up the front loop only from the next 2 stitches and then making a single crochet. So that turns 2 stitches into 1 stitch. It'll start to decrease our numbers and bring the circle back in so that we can close our plushie. This is one of the reasons why I enjoy using inline crochet hooks, because they're a lot sharper and it's easier to grab loops compared to like the normal type of crochet hooks you see everywhere. Yeah, just go around and repeat that 8 times. And if you ever want like a tip about designing your own patterns, numbers really matter. So you never want to be like futzing something to get it to work. It all has to math. That sounded silly. If you want to make a plushie like this, if you want to design, I don't know, a different type of animal, like a sheep would be really cool, a loaf sheep, and you want it to be a little smaller. Say you do 2 single crochets, increase around, and then you go down, single crochet as much as you want to make a tube. When you go to start decreasing, you want to start with the same increase that you had. So you'll do 2 single crochets, invisible decrease, repeated the same amount of times as what you started with. And that'll keep your numbers at the same pattern of decrease as you did increase, if that makes any sense. I've been trying to challenge myself to design like more complicated plushies that don't necessarily follow the tube form. And that's just something I've learned, and I always try and pay attention to is like consistency. Everything should work. It shouldn't be like, oh, I have to add 1 extra single crochet to this row. I have to add a few here to make it work, or a few there. Honestly, that's fine to do sometimes. Like I do that sometimes to align the eyebrows, or the fox face I made was kind of weird and I had to add a few. But like you shouldn't be doing that for every single row. It should be consistently working. That's not to say you can't 100% freestyle something, write it down, and sell it as a pattern, because if that's what you want to do, you should totally do that. It's just my opinion that patterns should be like easy to memorize after you make it once. After you make it once, you should be able to make it again without concentrating on the written pattern so much. Like maybe you have to glance at it a few times to get a reminder, but you kind of should be able to make it again without struggling to understand how to do it and reading every single stitch, every single line. For example, I think that's why a lot of people like this pattern and my bird pattern and other like simple patterns I've come up with, is because I don't really look at the written pattern when I make these. I just remember you increase up to 3, you single crochet 17, put the 2 ears, single crochet around for 2 rows, add the feet, single crochet around for 6 rows, add the feet, single crochet around, and then start your decrease from 3. But that's just my 2 cents and what I've learned. Sorry, I'm just talking. I should be reading what we're supposed to be doing on the screen. I just get kind of bored because I've been doing this since like 5 a.m. and now it's 12. And I feel like you guys might be bored of hearing the same thing over and over again too. I don't know, maybe I should ask my Patreon members what I should talk about when I get bored in my next video. Anyway, you should have been decreasing from 3 single crochets to invisible decrease for a row, 2 single crochets, invisible decrease for a row, and then stopping to stuff the plushie. And now we're doing 1 single crochet, invisible decrease around, repeated 8 times. And your numbers should be going down in multiples of 8 because we're taking away 8 stitches for each row. And like I was saying earlier, that's the same as when we were making the face, we were adding 8 stitches for each row. The only tip I have to share about decreasing when your plushie is stuffed is that you kind of want to pull each stitch tight, because sometimes the pressure of the stuffing like pushing back against you can make your stitches a little loose. So you can try to pull it tight after each stitch so you don't get like a bunch of holes in your decrease section. I'm gonna leave a long tail because we're gonna sew it closed. So fasten off, and then we're gonna use our yarn needle to sew it closed. And the way I like to do it is I just loop around the front loop only of each stitch, and then I pull it tight and it'll close itself almost like a magic circle. And you can take this chance if there are any holes, you can just go back and forth over them a few times. Another tip is try to stay out of the stuffing as much as you can. If you get this stuffing all wrapped up in your stitches, it's like super annoying to clean it off. I use like a lint roller, but it takes forever, and it's better just to be mindful when you're making the plushie so it doesn't happen to begin with. I tie a knot 3 times and then I hide the knot inside the plushie. You can go back and forth and do whatever you want to fix it all up and make it look pretty. Yay, we're basically done our cat. We just have one more thing to do, which is make the tail and sew it on. So I'm going to start with the white yarn, make a magic circle, and then make 7 single crochets in the magic circle. I'm going to go through this like kind of fast because it's all using stuff that we already did. So now we're going to single crochet around with white before switching over to the body color and single crocheting around for 5 or 6 rows. You can make it as long or as short as you like. I like kind of the shorter tails, but some people like longer ones, so it's totally up to you. I don't stuff the tails, but you can if you would like to. I leave a long tail and fasten off, and then I'm going to sew it on to the cat's behind. So I just kind of eyeball it and see what looks right, and then I secure the front and the back first so that it's not moving around or it doesn't come out crooked by the time I make it all the way around. And then I just go and I work my way around, going through each stitch of the tail and securing it down to the body. I like sewing on the tail because I want it to have a round base so it stands up by itself and looks like a cattail. If you wanted to, you could make the tail first and then crochet it on when you're doing, I don't know, maybe like row 18 or row 19, but the base would be flat and it might kind of like flop around. So yeah, I just take the extra minute or so to sew it on and then tie a knot 3 times, and I hide the end inside the plushie. Yay, now we're officially done. That video was super long. I just watched it back before like finishing it, and I made the opening way too long. I cut out like half of it because it reminded me of when you go on a website. I have to go through like a 3-page blog post just to get the recipe. That's basically what my opening was. Sorry, I'm trying to be like more present in my videos. I just happen to be super awkward and my face makeup was like 2 shades too light. Anyway, I'll just never watch it again. If you made it this far, hey, I think that officially means that we're friends. I want to take a second to thank all of my Patreon members. You guys are the best, and I appreciate your support so much. It's awesome to have a group of crochet friends that I can bounce ideas off of and share things with that I'm not quite ready to share on social media. I love seeing all of your creations and I appreciate your feedback so much. I've posted my next pattern on my Patreon and you might be able to see it in the background right now. And it was one of those patterns that is challenging and not tube-like, so I'm proud of myself. I still have to do some more work to get the PDF ready because right now it's just a plain pattern without how-to pictures or diagrams or any of that cool stuff that I always put in my patterns. I haven't quite decided what my next YouTube video will be. I do have a ton of footage showing how to make my spirit chevron shawl. I just have to sit down and actually edit it together and make like an opening and all that stuff. So maybe I'll focus on getting that video finished and out while I work on my new pattern PDF. Thanks for watching and for being so awesome. I did want to close this video off with a quick message from my sponsor, who has patiently been very quiet and waiting their turn to say something the whole time I've been recording. So here we go. Sponsor of this video. Now's your chance.
I gotta say hi, you. Hi. Hi, Mama.
Hi, baby.
Mama. Mika, are you baby cat? Meow.